I would like to take the opportunity to do the thing I said I was grossly unqualified to do, and give a brief layman's 5-minute introduction to the psychology of Carl Jung. This is a 5-minute timer. Those of you, well, some of you know that I use these a lot in the classes I teach in my personal life, and now here, I guess. Right, so that's going to keep me accountable. I suppose I'll start at the beginning. I'll talk just a little bit about who Carl Jung was. I imagine there are at least probably a couple folks in the audience who might not even really be familiar with who he is or who he was. Carl Jung was born in 1875, died in 1961, lived a very long, illustrious, some would say infamous life. He, along with his contemporary and close colleague, later frenemy, Dr. Sigmund Freud, are considered the two fathers of modern psychoanalytic theory, or what's sometimes called depth psychology or psychodynamic theory. Those are all slightly different, but not enough time to go into the differences between those. For our purposes, they're roughly similar. Jung was 30 years Freud's junior, though, and had some rather radically different ideas than Freud, it turns out. And they did have a very traumatic break in, I believe, the year 1913. Thank you. From which neither men, judging by their later writings, really recovered, nor has, frankly, the psychological discipline from that split in many ways. Whether or not you buy into depth psychology, psychoanalytic theory, psychoanalysis, it can't be denied that psychoanalytic theory laid the groundwork and has been deeply influential on every school of psychology that has followed. Whether it's endorsing elements of Freud and Jung's ideas or discarding the ones that they feel are not quite right. Every theory has had to grapple with Freud and Jung. Okay. Carl Jung's unique contributions to psychoanalytic theory, to psychology, are more household names than Carl Jung's name itself. You're probably familiar, again, if not with Jung, with his contributions to the field of type psychology. He coined the famous introvert-extrovert distinction. That was entirely Jung. In addition, he laid the groundwork and established a definition, a working definition, and explored this realm of what he called the collective unconscious. A shadowy, murky realm that has arisen alongside humanity and is populated by some familiar and unfamiliar figures to us, figures that he called, and again, another of Jung's coinages in psychological theory, the archetypes. Dr. Shackelford is going to be talking about just these archetypes, what the heck these are, these patterns of thoughts, feelings, and behavior that reside within the collective unconscious. She'll not only be talking about them, but showing some examples of what those archetypes are and how they may even possess an individual.
Sure, right.
Spread the joy around.
Yeah, which I understand is part of the bylaws for the Austin humanist community, those sorts of limits. I was just reading through them earlier today. Good practice. But how many times have you spoken for the JSA?
Oh gosh, I don't
Many.
remember.
Right. I was very privileged to see your wonderful talk on the archetypes in Paul Thomas Anderson's Phantom Thread, which was one of my 5 favorite films of the year. So it was.
Yeah.
I thought I was coming prepared. I was like, oh, there's some anima representations of the archetype here, and I did my homework, and they started with the anima, like the first 2 minutes, and then everything else was far deeper, and it was astonishing. It was so good.
You have to love Mushroom Girl, though.
Animalia muscaria,
Yeah.
right? Yes. Ooh,
Yeah.
right. The archetype of the
that would
cook,
be the witch.
of the witch.
Mm-hmm.
And Dr. Shackelford will be giving a talk specifically on the witch archetype. You might have, I hope you have, the insert on your chairs next month at the Jung Society at the.
This one?
Yes,
Right.
yes, the little postcard. Yes, that one right there. The Jung Society generally asks, I think, a $10 free will donation. But in my experience, it is worth every penny, I assure you. And I, for one, am very much looking forward to that talk, as well as this talk. Dr. Shackelford holds a doctorate of depth psychotherapy from the Pacifica Depth Institute in California, where she studied under the late eminent analytical theorist, Dr. James Hillman, that I believe you'll be talking a little bit about. She is a licensed professional counselor as well as a depth psychotherapist with offices both here in Austin and in San Antonio. Please give a round of applause for Dr. Victoria Shackelford.
Thanks, guys. Who is there is the question you want to keep asking yourself as we go through this talk, and I show you images of archetypes and explain what they are. And right away, I want to point out that little figure, one of my favorite archetypes. It's a Mayan sculpture, but that would be a coyote, and he would be the archetype of the trickster. And if you know anything about indigenous cultures and the coyote, it's a shapeshifter, can do a lot of different things. So watch the images as we go along and kind of ask yourself, who is there within you? All right, so let me just talk a little bit about Jung and what he calls the archetypes. You can go to the next slide as we go forward. Archetypes belong to the realm of the activity of the instinct. So that's the human part, that instinct part. And I'm going to ask you, when you ask who is there throughout this talk, like, what are my instincts? What's coming up for me in my body? It's going to give you some clues. So it's activities of the instincts in the sense that this is the antiquities part, they represent inherited forms of psychic behavior. All right? So we'll explain that as we go along. The next slide. So these are some of the things that I tried to put together that are characteristics of when you feel the presence of a certain way of being, a certain pattern instinctually in your body. And the archetypes are a true living experience. If you're madly in love, that's an archetypal experience. It's an idea in the psyche. As long ago as Plato wrote that archetypes are an idea that occurs in the psyche. So they are very ancient, symbolic, meaningful images in our unconscious, our collective unconscious. Their home is in the collective unconscious. And they have like I said, I might decide I'm getting bored and I'm going to dance. That's a dynamic energy. Music. That beautiful music that we heard from our performer this morning, that's a dynamic energy. And they have autonomy. They're in and of themselves. And then luminosity, they can be grand, have a grand feeling state that we go to when we experience them. And there are psychic patterns. So if you take the mother archetype, there's nurturing and caring and all of the things that we associate with mothers are patterns of behavior. And they're in all cultures in all time. So you want to go to the next slide. So we are born carrying them, and they occur as patterns of our situations as humans since primitive time. So it's important, like if you want to tune into that and bring them out of the unconscious and bring them into your consciousness. So Jung said they present themselves as personified typical modes of apprehension. Pay attention to that word apprehension when we go to the next slide. So that's where we get into the possession. That's how we know them in our body. They have an emotional, possessive, Jung called it apprehension, that's instinct, that affect, that can blind us. So if we're caught and possessed in the archetype, and I'm going to use falling in love, all of us have fallen in love at some point in our lives. We can't see anything else but that. So as that human experience, that's what I want you to pay attention to. And then we act out these archetypal patterns of behavior under their influence. So it makes sense to kind of want to bring them into consciousness. They have both a light and a shadow side, a positive and a negative. For instance, we'll take the Great Mother. So nurturing, in every culture you say mother, everybody knows the patterns of behavior for the mother, but then you go to India, Kali is a mother who's really pissed off, and she's going to come in and destroy things. And so you can see how there's a yin and a yang, a dark and a light side to archetype. And the repressed shadow side is the part we often don't want to think about. And if you talk about religion, it's all about the light and the spirit ascending, but the archetypes remind us that we are often about the dark as well, and that can't be denied. All right, so let's go to the next slide. So how do we act them out, and where do we find them? So I'm kind of going through this because I want to really give you a lot of times for questions and answers and check in with your own body, who is there. So we find them in our dreams, and since I'm a psychotherapist and Jungian psychologist, I do a lot of dream groups, and I love my dreams, and if you have a repeated dream, they pay attention to those. In art forms, like music and dance, that's an expression of a dynamic, numinous experience or musical experience this morning. Poetry uses language and words, and it's not concrete, it's not literal, it's meaning-making, the way it's put together. And each person that will hear a poem from a poet will make meaning of it as for their own individual experience. And literature, of course, is all about, you have the protagonist, you have the hero, you have the victim, you have the warrior, and all of these different, and the dark side and the light side it's not a very good book. You kind of want all that stuff in there. And anytime any of us in this room, as we go through about our day today, and you have an overwhelming feeling, you can ask yourself, who is there? Which one? Am I feeling like that person was mean to me and I'm being victimized, or am I feeling superior? Any kind of strong, overwhelming feeling is a good way to recognize and ask yourself who, I don't want to act that out, or I do, in consciousness. So like hate, rage. I'm going to slow down here because I want you, these are all very human, what it means to be human experiences. We feel stuck, either in our job, in a marriage, a relationship, or just within ourselves. We're one-sided. It's all the other person's fault. One-sided relation. It's blaming. It has a lot to do with one-sidedness. Or we're consumed in love, which I've already mentioned here. And I hope all of us in this room has been consumed in love, or the good, the bad, and the ugly, for whatever you got out of it. You want that experience. But at the same time, it's painful. Or fantastic, or both, all the time. So we either feel powerless or powerful. You see, it's like it's like a polar opposite, two sides to a similar coin. And that's why I made the comment about dancing. If I start getting nervous up here, I go too fast, and you might see me just dance across the street, just to kind of get myself grounded in my body between the poles of being powerful and not so powerful. I want to kind of be in that middle space. So grandiose or small, you get the picture. It's a paradoxical situation as humans that we struggle. And the archetype, because of their pattern of behavior and feeling states that we can recognize them, give us a chance to take it and go, I'm really trying to rescue this person, and is that really about me, or is that really about the person? And as a therapist and people come to my office, I really have to always figure that out to make sure it's always about that person and not my need to run in and rescue them. So you can see how that's important. Let's go to the next one. So I've said this phrase a couple of times, who is there? So let's just sit for a minute with that. And I'm going to ask my beloved Michael, timekeeper, there you are, how am I doing?
Doing wonderful.
Okay, where are we?
You've got at least 15.
Okay, good, because I want now to kind of give, I kind of rushed through that first part, so I kind of want to just kind of sink in a little bit. I have time now. And how do we ask who is there? So we have to, I was talking to a young, nice gentleman from England, and he does meditation stuff, and that's one way. We can get centered and get into our breath and into our body. Eckhart Tolle, I'm sure some of you have read his work, talks a lot about if you can't, just focus on your hand and imagine how much energy goes there. And that's a good way to figure out what archetype, who is there right now in this moment. And you'll go out of this room and all day long you're going, what's there? What am I feeling? It helps you really stay centered with yourself to ask those questions. So we discover who is there by the symptoms experienced in the body and mind, what I just talked about. Every symptom comes from the image of some archetypal situation. So right now, I'm thinking would be a good time, I was going to do this meditation at the end, but I think I've got time before we go into the images to get everybody centered. So I'm going to take a big deep breath and be real quiet. And let's go to the next slide. Here's a list of archetypes. Just kind of focus on those, and we'll just breathe. Much better, because I was really rushing there. I get, when I'm nervous, I don't know any of y'all, I rush. And so I wanted to slow it all down. Thank y'all for working with me on this. And here's some of these autonomous patterns of psychic behavior. And each one of them, the anima, is the feminine behaviors and patterns of behaviors and feelings in a man's psyche, the masculine, not the masculine, an actual human being psyche. And it can also be in a woman's psyche, but Jung defined it as in a man's psyche. It's your muse, it's the spirit or soul, or it has a numinous experience. Artists want to, I'm also a painter, and if I'm not in touch with the muse and I haven't put out her favorite meals and her favorite wine, and I've got those candles and my palette's all ready, it's not going to be good. So we want to really pay attention to that. That's a helper, but there's a light and a dark side to that. And then the animus, which I'm more familiar with, that is the masculine energies in a woman's psyche. And when I was writing my dissertation, I had all these blockages. I'm not good enough. I can't do this. And that's why you have 3 people on the dissertation committee, because one of them was like, you're not a good writer, you need blah, blah, blah. It was a man. And I immediately fell into that. What's wrong with me? I can't do it. And so then my analyst said, but when you're struck by a negative aspect of your animus as a woman, there's your positive animus right there. The good father teaches their daughters how to build a bridge, how to be an engineer out into the world, how to present that out. So guess what? Just tell them to arm wrestle. And it was, I got over my writer's block. So it's the same with the anima for a man's psyche. A man's psyche, if it's a negative anima, that's he's in the possession, has possessed him. It's kind of like what we girls call greasy hair days. He doesn't want to do anything. He just wants to lie around on the couch and watch ball games all day long and not get out, and doesn't feel, he's not inspired to go out and build a bridge. But there's a positive anima there in that male psyche that goes, I'm your muse, invite me in. And don't project me on another woman. You have it all within yourself. Carry that. So you see how this is playing out. The self is a symbol of wholeness, and the negative part, or the shadow side of that, is when we feel broken and we don't feel all of our parts. And a good example of that is the mandala. And you can see how that, a circle, you just want to arrange everything balanced. So that's a symbol of the self. And then, of course, we've mentioned already the Great Mother, and there's a positive and negative charge to that. The father, that is helpful, teaches a son an initiation into adulthood, teaches daughter how to be in this patriarchal society we live in and how to operate in that way, or ignores the son and doesn't give him an initiation. And unfortunately, in our culture, the most dominant initiation for the young male psyche is the warrior. Right? So think about that. Then you have the puree or boy, and that's the male psyche that doesn't want to grow up, the whole Peter Pan thing that you hear about. And then you have the core or the maiden, who is the same. She wants to remain innocent and always is looking for the hero to come and rescue her from, I don't want to build a bridge. I'm the beautiful maiden, right? And then, of course, the hero is a wonderful archetype. Joseph Campbell wrote about it, The Hero with 1,000 Faces. He did that wonderful Building Warriors special on this, which I recommend to everyone. It's now on Netflix. And it has a positive and a negative charge to it in our psyche, and we'll behave accordingly. If the hero uses his strength and wanting to run in, but he gets so much ego charge from rescuing a victim, he's going to have a victim all the time. So you can see how it can play either way. The wise old man, wow, we need so many wise old men. You guys step up. We're waiting. We need the wise old men back in our culture. And of course, I've already mentioned the trickster. They're the clown. They're the ones that can speak truth to power. Just watch the Colbert or all those comics, late night comics. But they're also in American Indian lore, and all cultures have tricksters. They shape-shift. You think they're one thing, they're another. When have you been that way? Right? A very useful, one of my most favorite archetypes. And then the divine child. We all have one of those. And if we live long enough, sometimes it goes to a wounded child, but we don't want to stay in it. We want to enrich it. Right? And of course, the shadow, which is all over this whole talk, is an archetype within itself. And then the conjunto, which is the most interesting one, is when we can bring the two together, right? Next slide. And I'll talk more about that last one as we go through. What do we got? So now this is the fun part. So we kind of took our deep breath and we looked at some words that have symbolic meaning. Each one of you in your own psyche, when you saw hero or core, the maiden, or the muse, the anima, had your own meaning for that, but it's a collective ancient form that's coming up into your own right now in present century, right now in this room psyche. So I thought, well, I can keep picking things from books and all these ancient, beautiful, from ancient cultures, but I thought, this is the humanist society. So, what is it? What's our new name now? The Austin? Humanist community. I like community. That's even better. Society sounds that's a different connotation. You see how this works, right? Words are important. So I've traveled to New Orleans and San Francisco a lot. Of course, I live in Austin. So I just went in all my travels and picked out all these photographs from the street. And my favorites were the ones from Austin. I mean, and just coming here, it's like this building is an archetype. It's full of them. So I've already decided whoever wants to join me at another time when I don't have to go to work, go drink beer in that other little house and talk about all this over a nice table and just kind of really get a little inebriated, get a little Dionysus going. But let's look at some images. So I picked the sun, which is a masculine archetype, a symbol of the masculine. It's inspirational, it's uplifting, it's Zeus, the sun god. But I love it that it gives us these beautiful sunsets as it dwells down into the feminine. But let's see what comes after that. Oh, wow, we love this guy. I mean, that's a beautiful masculine figure. And let's just kind of go through them and sit for a minute. I'll kind of go like that let's do the next one. We all know what that is, right? The father. And guess what? That's my grandbaby. And that's my son that's from England. So I had to be a little proud grandma archetype. You see how it works? I mean, this is being a human being, and these are words, and they're analytical, and they're in our head, but they really connect to a real lived experience, right? Well, this was wandering around Austin, and that's Kelly, who's done this wonderful exhibit at the Branton. Right. I got 2 minutes, so let's keep going through those. The hero and the innocent maiden. Keep going. Oh, well, there's an archetype for Austin, right? Right. And he's doing his work. Keep going. Oh, well, that's an old boyfriend. But here's a beautiful musician. Keep going. We'll just go through them. Wise old men and their dog. So important. Wonderful warriors down here, and a god, a masculine god. Keep going. These are from Haight-Ashbury, I think. Yes, the eagle is a really important masculine archetype. There's a Mayan demon. And of course, Elvis in somebody's yard. You see how we use all these archetypes? Let's see what's next. The moon, the feminine. Let's keep moving because I got 2 minutes. There's a wonderful, these are all murals from, this is New Orleans. There's a core, that's the maiden. There's an Austin maiden on 6th Street. I wandered around. She's beautiful, right? There's the dance, right? That's the expression of the archetype. And there's, of course, people put Madonnas and Mary and Virgin of Guadalupe all over their yards. Keep going. A wonderful religious archetype, how the feminine has been elevated without her darkness. There she comes up and goes, no, I'm going to want you to pay attention to all of me. Keep going. And of course, the cow was wonderful, the mother cow, beautiful archetype. There's how we put it in our yards, mother and child. Oh, that's my grandson again. That's the divine child. How can I not? Right? It's great to be a human being. And, of course, this is me, the queen, when I got my dissertation for persistence. I just had to throw that in because, you know, my ego said, you have to put that in. Okay. And, of course, I'm at a place with a friend of mine, and there's the queen. It's like a little museum. There's Peter Kahlo. That's in Haight-Ashbury. Wonderful. She's everywhere with her little black monkey. Right. Keep going. And then I put in one of my mandala paintings, because that's a symbol of the self, the wholeness, the circle. Okay. Of course, the apple, the feminine, then we have the witch, and then we have the core, the innocent maiden, and guess what happened there, right? And there's the Garden of Eden, guess what happened there? Keep going. Oh, there's my wonderful witch. This is done by a child. You can't tell me children they're not scared by this stuff. Keep going. There's one of my witch drawings from the last talk I gave. That's the witch in Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. Keep going. This is Kali that I mentioned earlier, the other side to the mother. And she's really a wonderful archetype because she comes in when people are not living their whole authentic self. And she comes in and goes, this isn't working. I'm taking this all apart and giving you a tsunami. Let's go to the next one. I love death. There you go. The black cat. And then we put it on our book, you know, that's a little bookstore in San Francisco. And then we got the Trickster God. Pan is half man and half goat. He was sort of the bridge archetype between our animalistic self and our human self. Keep going. There he is. Boy, he's a very important archetype. He's a trickster. He would be in the trickster realm. And there he is with the nymphs. That's in California. And, of course, we have the coyote again. Love this book. It's a fun, wonderful book to understand the trickster archetype in Native American lore. Keep going. And, of course, this is on the streets of New Orleans, the clown, another trickster. And, of course, we're getting to the coming together of the opposites. So we have a little love fist, my two kitties. Keep going. And then we have the same thing with the nuns and they're the shadow, the moon in the black, and of course the white, ascending church figure. And of course, falling in love and the complexities all that brings to our life. The kahunta, the coming together, is my daughter and her boyfriend in San Francisco, the coming together of the opposites. And of course, a beautiful scene on 6th Street of this couple and their dog. It's the family, it's the coming together of our hearts, right? So what's important here is through meaning of all of these images, we become participating partners in the collective human experience. Once we make it conscious, each archetypal pattern yields numinous ideas ahead of our actual intellectual level. That's why it's a feeling. Then we figure it out. So insight emerges at this juncture between archetypal possession and archetypal consciousness. Then we can shift our experience. What do we got next? Oh, I think I'm done. How did I do? Okay, I'm good. And that's a drawing I did of me in my collective unconscious state with all these archetypes swirling around behind me. So let's go to the next one. Okay, and you've all got on your chairs. I'm going to give a talk called The Witch at the Young Society, October the 12th. And all the drawings are mine, so I have a lot of fun being an archetypal person. All right, so we're now at the question and answer part. How did I do for my 20 minutes?
Thank you so much. Everyone, another hand for
I hope I was trying to give as much time as I could without rushing, and I think I rushed a little bit. But
fine job.
Okay. And we did get a few moments of quiet and breath.
It is 12:30. Do we have time for a couple questions? Yeah? A couple? Two questions? Two questions, all right.
Make them good.
Okay, John, I saw you first. Oh, and yes, please, out of respect for our speaker, ensure that it is a question and not a comment.
Okay, yeah, I'm just trying to understand. So these archetypes are all part of ourselves, and we want to identify which one has come to the surface?
Yes, because we don't want, they're gonna come to they're gonna get us anyway, they're gonna possess us, so we want to turn that possession into consciousness. So when we feel it in our bodies, those ways I pointed out, sometimes we transcend that and put it into art and music, or sometimes we're unconscious and we can see it happening all over the news media, everywhere. You know, we want to bring it to consciousness, and then we have the chance to wrestle with that tension between the dark and the light side of that archetype and go, where am I at in that? Where's my truth in that, my authentic self? Any more?
And then, yes.
How are archetypes related to truth?
Archetypes are not, it's not about truth, it's about true feeling, which is, it's not this belief, this is my truth and this is for everyone. It's your own individual true feeling. And then you have to, these are ancient symbols that have meaning through antiquity, and you can come to your own true meaning of that for yourself. For every time I'm in the office working with a patient, I have to, if I'm activated, I have to decide, is this about me or about them? And then I have to do that work because it needs to be about them. And sometimes I go, oh, it is about me. How can I use it to be more empathetic and compassionate for what they're telling me? So it really is an individual.
May I ask one more
Yeah.
word to that? You said about the collective unconscious, having trouble understanding that individual versus collective.
Okay, the personal unconscious is your own unconscious feelings and stuff from the stories of your life. The collective unconscious is our own tapping into the collective idea of the hero, or all the things that we all experience as human beings, the mother, the divine child. So you have to separate those out. It's vast. The collective unconscious. Any more questions? Everybody good? Right, and we can certainly, meet any other time and talk.
Yes.
That's a quick overview.